Z-Best scam. One of Wall Street's biggest frauds. Understanding Z-Best. Barry Minkow was born in Inglewood, California, to a Jewish family, and was raised in the Reseda area of the San Fernando Valley. When he was 9 years old, his mother got him a job as a telemarketer with the carpet cleaning business where she worked. At the age of 16, while a sophomore at Cleveland High School, Minkow started Z-Best in his parents' garage with 3 employees and 4 phones. To create an illusion of a profitable business, Minkow began committing criminal acts, such as check kiting, theft, insurance scams, and fraud, to fund operations and pay suppliers. Soon after, Minkow branched into the insurance restoration business. With the help of Tom Paget, a claims adjuster, Minkow forged numerous documents claiming that Z-Best was involved in several restoration projects for Paget's company. Paget and Minkow formed a fake company, Interstate Appraisal Services, that verified the details of these restorations to Minkow's bankers. Flush with loans from these banks, Minkow expanded Z-Best across Southern California. While most Ponzi schemes are based on non-existent businesses, Z-Best's carpet cleaning division was very real and won high marks for its quality. However, its insurance restoration division, which eventually accounted for 86% of company revenues, was fraudulent. Minkow raised money by factoring his accounts receivable for work under contract, as well as floating funds through several banks in an elaborate check kiting scheme. After graduating from high school in 1985, Minkow devoted all of his time to Z-Best. Short of cash despite the recent expansion, he got a loan from Jack Catton, a Los Angeles businessman who had ties to organized crime. Catton later sued Minkow for not paying him his share of the company's profits, but Minkow claimed Catton was a usurer. The suit was still working its way through the courts at the time of Catton's death in 1987. Other organized crime figures turned up as Minkow's advisors, which unnerved his employees. For instance, a major shareholder, Maurice Rind, had been convicted of securities fraud in 1976. Minkow was also a business partner with Robert Viggiano, a convicted jewel thief and reputed loan shark. Going public. At the suggestion of a friend, Minkow took his company public in January 1986, garnering a spot on NASDAQ. The accountant who audited Z-Best before it went public did not visit the insurance restoration sites himself. Had he done so, he would have discovered they were mailboxes located throughout the San Fernando Valley. Minkow retained a 53% controlling interest in Z-Best, making him an instant millionaire on paper. Going public seemingly offered him a way to cover up his fraudulent activities. Under securities law at the time, he had to retain his personal shares for 2 years. He planned to sell 1 million shares to the public in January 1988, believing this would give him enough money to pay everyone off and go completely legitimate. In order to obtain more financing, Minkow was persuaded to raise $15 million of capital through an initial public offering of Z-Best stock. When accountants wanted to inspect the company's operations, he borrowed fake offices for a tour of Interstate Appraisal Services, and used an incomplete building to present a fake restoration job. Mark Moores, Z-Best's financial consultant, tricked the accountants sent to perform the necessary due diligence by faking thousands of documents. The public offering closed in December and Minkow became the youngest person to lead a company through an IPO in American financial history. Minkow launched a massive television advertising campaign portraying Z-Best as a carpet cleaner that Southern Californians could trust. He owned a Ferrari and a BMW, and bought a mansion in the wealthy valley community of Woodland Hills. He had ambitions of making the company the General Motors of the carpet cleaning industry. Z-Best's chief financial officer, Charles Arrington, was accused of running up $91,000 in fraudulent charges against customers of his florist business. When the Feshbach brothers, a pair of short sellers, learned that Minkow still stood behind Arrington, they did further investigating and discovered Z Best's claimed $7 million contract to clean carpets in Sacramento was likely a fraud. This prompted the Feshbacks to short Z Best stock, anticipating that it would fall. Additionally, none of the company's 4 outside directors had any experience running a public company. Downfall. By February 1987, Z Best was trading at $18 a share on NASDAQ, valuing the company at $280 million. Minkow's stake was worth $100 million. The company now had 1,030 employees with offices in California, Arizona and Nevada. Despite its growth, the company was still facing severe cash flow shortages from paying investors for the non-existent restoration projects. Minkow learned that KeyServe, the authorized carpet cleaner for Sears, was being sold by its British parent. He began merger talks with KeyServe, as the cash infusion would solve Z Best's immediate cash flow issues. Additionally, Minkow thought that KeyServe Sears business would give Z Best enough cash to end the Ponzi scheme sooner than originally planned. Drexel Burnham Lambert offered to finance the deal with a private placement of junk bonds. Although KeyServe was twice Z Best's size, the two companies agreed to a $25 million deal in which Z Best would be the surviving company. The merger would have made Z Best Sears' authorized carpet cleaner, and also would have made Minkow the president and chairman of the board of the largest independent carpet cleaning company in the U.S. Soon after the KeyServe deal was announced, Minkow began making plans to become even more powerful, planning to raise $700 to $800 million to buy ServiceMaster in a hostile takeover and intending to expand to the United Kingdom. Outside of carpet cleaning, he had begun preliminary discussions to buy Major League Baseball's Seattle Mariners. Just as the KeyServe merger was about to close, the credit card fraud that helped keep Z Best afloat in the early years proved to be Minkow's undoing. Minkow had blamed the fraudulent charges on unscrupulous contractors and another employee, and paid back most of the victims. However, he had not paid back a homemaker who had been overcharged a few $100s. When he ignored her requests to pay her back, she tracked down several other people who had been defrauded by Minkow and gave a diary of her findings to the Los Angeles Times. The Times then wrote a story revealing that Minkow had run up $72,000 in fraudulent credit card charges in 1984 and 1985. The story, which ran just days before the merger was to close, sent Z Best stock plunging 28%. Within hours of the story's publication, Z Best's banks either called their loans or threatened to do so. Drexel postponed closing until it could investigate further. Later that day, at a press conference, a reporter revealed evidence that the Sacramento carpet cleaning project didn't exist. More seriously, she discovered that Z Best did not have the contractor's license required for large-scale restoration work. 3. To calm nervous investors, Minkow issued a press release touting record profits and revenues but did so without notifying Ernst & Winnie, now part of Ernst & Young, the firm responsible for auditing the company prior to the KeyServe deal. The press release also implied that Drexel had cleared Z Best of any wrongdoing, briefly stopping the decline. However, Drexel abruptly pulled out of the deal a few days later, causing the stock price to fall again. Drexel's withdrawal stopped the deal 4 to 7 days before it was due to close. The day after this press release, Ernst & Winnie discovered that Minkow had written several checks to support the validity of the non-existent contracts. Many of them had been written to an associate who later told Ernst & Winnie officials about the fraud. Minkow denied knowing the man, but shortly after the checks were discovered, Ernst & Winnie discovered that he had cut 2 checks to the associate for an unrelated matter. When Minkow could not explain the checks, Ernst & Winnie resigned as Z Best's auditor. However, it did not inform the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, of its suspicions until a month later. On July 2, Minkow abruptly resigned from Z Best for health reasons. By this time, his company's stock had fallen to $3.50 a share, an 81% drop from its high in February. Minkow later revealed that on June 27, 6 days earlier, an independent law firm the company had retained to investigate the allegations asked for the addresses for all of the company's restoration jobs. Minkow knew that those projects did not exist and decided to resign. Later, he reportedly told a member of his board that the insurance restoration business had been a sham from the very beginning. ZZZZ's new board conducted an internal investigation that largely substantiated the fraud allegations. On July 6 it sued Minkow, alleging that he had absconded with $23 million in company funds. ZZZZ claimed that its assets had been drained to the point that it was forced into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 2 days later, the Los Angeles Police Department raided ZZZZ's headquarters and Minkow's home, and found evidence that the company was being used to launder drug profits for organized crime. Conviction and prison. Minkow and 10 other ZZZZ insiders were indicted by a federal grand jury in January 1988 on 54 counts of racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, mail fraud, tax evasion and bank fraud. The indictment accused Minkow of bilking banks and investors of millions of dollars while systematically draining his company of assets. It also accused Minkow of setting up dummy companies, writing phony invoices and conducting tours of purported restoration sites. Prosecutors estimated that as much as 90% of the company's revenue was fraudulent. On June 16, prosecutors won a superseding indictment charging Minkow with credit card fraud and 2 additional counts of mail fraud. While Minkow admitted to manipulating the company's stock, he claimed that he was forced to turn the company into a Ponzi scheme under pressure from the organized crime figures who secretly controlled his company, a story he later admitted was false. On December 14, he was found guilty on all charges. On March 27, 1989, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was also placed on 5 years probation and ordered to pay $26 million in restitution. In sentencing him, U.S. District Court Judge Dikran Tavrizian described Minkow as a man without a conscience, rejecting his plea for a lighter sentence as a joke and a slap on the wrist for someone who had manipulated the financial system. The SEC subsequently banned him from ever serving as an officer or director of a public company again. He served under 7.5 years, most of them at Federal Correctional Institution, Inglewood. While imprisoned, Minkow claimed to have become a born-again Christian. During his prison stay, he became involved in Christian ministry, completing coursework through Liberty University's School of Lifelong Learning. Release. Minkow was convicted of 57 counts of credit card fraud, racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, mail fraud, tax evasion, as well as bank fraud, and was sentenced to 25 years in jail. After an early release in 1995, he founded the Fraud Discovery Institute, which aided the FBI and law enforcement agencies in uncovering white-collar crimes and their perpetrators. But, in 2011 he again fell foul of securities laws, was convicted of insider trading and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He found religion while in prison the first time and served as a pastor for many years, before pleading guilty in 2014 to defrauding his own church of more than $3 million in donations. This garnered him another 5-year prison sentence and he was released in the summer of 2019. He reportedly owes $612 million in restitution payment to a company whose stock he manipulated and the myriad individual victims of his many scams. The assets of ZZZZ, a few trucks and some cleaning equipment, were eventually sold for a paltry total of $64,000. And his Ponzi scheme went on to become one of best case studies in accounting fraud. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe our channel for more content like this.